we look at starts like this over the course of presidential election history, does history suggest that it's sustainable?
It is absolutely sustainable. Based on my 13 keys to the White House prediction system, which has been right since 1984. The way it works is it gauges the strength and performance of the White House party. And if 6 keys go against them, they're predicted losers. The Democrats did absolutely the right thing by uniting behind Harris. And the blazing start is indicative of that very smart decision, because one of my critical keys is internal party contest. And by uniting behind Harris, they preserve that key, which is one of the most predictive keys for wins and losses for a party holding the White House. This puts the Democrats in a very good position to win. I've said a lot would have to go wrong for the Democrats to lose based on my prediction system.
I want to ask you about the idea of double haters, which emerged in a lot of polling that we saw. People did not want either Donald Trump or Joe Biden in this campaign. This was a game changer based on polling that we've seen from the likes of Siena College, where we saw the double haters fall by about half. And it's led us to something called the persuadables. Something I talked to Don Levy at Siena College about a bit earlier today. I'm not sure if we have that, but I wonder your thoughts on Kamala Harris's ability to speak to the 1 in 8 voters who we're going to start calling persuadables. Listen to how Don Levy put it, and we'll have you respond.
When you look at the folks who are not persuadable, right now in our most recent national poll, 84% of voters are locked in. Their mind is made up. So we're down now to between 13 and 16% of voters who either may not show up or truly are the persuadables. At this point in time, a slight advantage for Trump over Harris amongst these persuadable voters.
Allan Lichtman, there's a lot of talk about who Kamala Harris will pick as a running mate. How important will that selection be to winning over the persuadables?
Well, generally a vice presidential pick doesn't matter. It doesn't figure in my keys to the White House, but it does seem to have come to the fore in this election because of the controversy over J.D. Vance and because we have this unusual situation in the Democratic Party of the president stepping down and the VP stepping up. This ability to persuade the persuadables because you've reduced kind of the double hate is very, very important on my system. Because one of my keys that counts against the White House party is third party. And the double hatred was building up the candidacy of RFK Jr. Now, with Harris speaking to those persuadable voters, the hatred diminishing, the chances of the Democrats losing the third party key has been greatly diminished, and that further enhances their ability to win in November.
So, Professor, do you think that RFK Jr. can actually make it to November, considering he's already struggled to get on ballots in a number of states? Do you expect that his candidacy will go the duration? And if it doesn't, who do those votes go to?
I don't think he's going to go to the duration with any substantial support. Under my system, a third party to make an impact has to get at least 5% of the vote. Of course, we don't know that. So I take the polling numbers and cut them in half. To make a real impact, RFK Jr. would have to stabilize at 10%. I think that's very unlikely. Since the Harris ascension, we've seen RFK Jr.'s numbers plummet. In polls I just saw today, he's 3%, 6%, nowhere near the numbers he needs to make an impact. So the Harris candidacy seems to have had a positive effect for the Democrats in blunting the impact of RFK Jr.
Rhetoric's been pretty hot since Kamala Harris emerged at the top of the ticket. Allan, we were just talking about what we've been hearing from Donald Trump, from J.D. Vance, calling her a liberal lunatic, dumb as a rock. We've heard others in the Republican Party refer to her as a DEI hire. Over the weekend, the vice president referenced the Trump campaign's attacks on her. as she spoke at a fundraiser in Massachusetts. Let's listen.
You may have seen me just pulled out of our debates. Yeah. I hope he reconsiders, because we have a lot to talk about.
It's just plain weird, she says, and that was what we heard from her surrogates on Sunday morning television. This has become the new line here, courtesy apparently the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, that they're being weird. I was asking on Friday if this is the new deplorable, and I'm not sure if that's the right comparison, but could this also backfire on Kamala Harris calling half the country weird?
I don't think she's called half the country weird. I think she's called Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and other Republicans who are making these completely unfounded, made-up, fabricated attacks on her. And I think the risk is for the Republicans. You know, they are bordering on misogyny and racism in their attacks on Kamala Harris. They can't afford to lose the women's vote big. Women are 53% of the electorate. And for a while, it looked like the non-white vote might be historically moving somewhat towards the Republicans. And these kinds of attacks risk losing that seeming advantage they had at one point in this campaign. I don't think this resonates anyway beyond their already hardcore base. And Republicans can't win with their hardcore base. As your analyst indicated, they have to expand into the moderate so-called persuadables.